Hello everyone, this is Dr. Kazi, and in this video we are going to learn about the mechanism of hormone action. What is a hormone? As we already know, hormones are the chemical messengers secreted by glands or the specialized cell into the blood vessels, and they influence the function of the target cell, which is located at some other part of the body. So let's have a look. Hormone will combine with the receptor to form a hormone receptor complex. Now this complex will perform the cascade of reaction or the variety of reactions inside the cell. For example, it may open or close the ion channel. It may activate the enzyme or the G proteins. So the location is very different for different receptors. Some receptors are found in or on the cell membrane. For example, the proteins and the peptide receptors are found on the cell membrane. Some are within the nucleus. The thyroid is a very good example. And the cytoplasm, the steroid hormones, have their receptor within the cytoplasm. Now the sensitivity of receptor is very different. It ranges from the 2K to 100K number of receptors on the cell membrane. How this activity is regulated by increasing or decreasing the number of receptors. So it can either receptor down regulation or the upregulation. Upregulation means the number of the receptor on the cell membrane increases, and it will cause the sensitivity of the cell to increase. The down regulation means the receptor concentration decreases by various processes. Let's have a look at it. Receptor inactivation, the intracellular protein inactivation. The receptor may combine with the outside of the cell membrane, but the intracellular part of the receptor may be inactivated and the hormone cannot perform its action. The lysosomal destruction, the lysosome will release the destructive enzymes and it will destroy the hormones. And the receptor inside the cell membrane. Sometimes the receptors are present on the cell membrane, but as soon as the hormone reaches the site, the receptor moves inside. So no receptor, no hormone receptor complex, no action. The intracellular signaling. As we already know, the hormone receptor complex will perform a variety of action inside the cell. So how does this receptor will perform the action? It will either close or open the ion channels, the G protein link, and the enzyme link receptors. Let's first of all discuss the ion channel link receptors. Very famous example, the junction between the axon terminal of one neuron and the dendrite portion of the other. The action potential reaches the axon knob. The action potential will causes the vesicles to fuse with the presynaptic membrane, and the hormones are released into the space. They will fuse with the receptors found on the postsynaptic membrane. It will then either open or close the channels. The famous are the sodium, potassium, and the calcium channels. So the G protein link receptors regulate the action indirectly rather directly, which were found in the ion channel link receptors. So G protein binding. What are GDP binding protein? It's a trimer made up of 3 subunits, the alpha, beta, and the gamma subunit. Have a look at this diagram. You see that 7 turns of this protein in and out of the membrane. This is known as the GDP binding couple receptor. It has 2 parts, the extracellular part, which is on the outside of the cell membrane, and the cytoplasmic part, the inside of the cell membrane. The cytoplasmic part is coupled with this GDP binding protein. Have a look. And it is in the form of inactivated GDP. When we have the hormones binded with the extracellular part, the cytoplasmic part of this GDP binding couple receptor activates this GDP binding proteins. The gamma and the beta subunits get detached from one another, and the alpha subunit will perform the cascade of reaction inside the cell. Let's have a look at the actions performed by this activated GDP alpha subunit. It performs 3 functions: either open or close the channels, change the enzymatic activity and the gene transcription. The alpha, beta, and the gamma subunits, there are two types of G protein. One is the G inhibitory and the other is the G stimulatory. So what is the G inhibitory and the stimulatory? When the hormone binds with the extracellular part of the GDP binding couple receptor, the cytoplasmic part will either activate the GDP inhibitory or the GDP